So this week, we're going to continue in our journey through the Tanya. We are speaking about chapter 38. We've been discussing a lot the difference between Torah and mitzvahs, and the past few weeks we've been talking about the emphasis of mitzvahs being incredible and how much a mitzvah means and how just the action is what matters, and that's really what's the source, the purpose of the entire creation. And then last week we were talking about how Torah has a very meaningful way of just bringing up your entire experience and refining you as a person, and really shifts the Avodas Hashem to a whole nother level when you engage with Torah. Beautiful, beautiful ideas. The Alter Rebbe now shifts focus, and he starts saying mitzvahs are very important, Torah is very, very important, but something else has to be said for what's behind the learning of the Torah, what's behind your mitzvah, what's deeper, what's your deeper experience, what's happening inside, the inner work that has to happen with the mitzvah. And something the Baal Shem Tov spoke a lot about was the concept of Rachmana Libabai, which means Hashem loves the heart. Hashem loves the heart. Hashem loves the kavana. Hashem loves the passion, the warmth, the intensity, the excitement that a yid exhibits when he engages with Torah and mitzvahs. And we've spoken about this in the way, way, way beginning, how this is one of the primary differences between Hasidim and others, where there was a huge focus on passion, a huge focus on hislavos, on excitement, on being invested. And there's a lot of back and forth around it. There very much was a lot of pushback for the Baal Shem Tov's approach to mitzvahs and to Torah, and the fact that there should be kavana behind it. Not kavana in the way that we usually translate kavana, which is intention. Here we're talking about the heart that's inside a mitzvah, the heart that's in your learning, and the investment that comes along with that. So a few different examples of where this was born for the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was once on his own davening, and davening for the Baal Shem Tov was the kind of experience that we can't even really comprehend, right? So the Baal Shem Tov was davening. His davening was about being in the upper supernal realms and bringing together supernal experiences, and something that we call yichudim, causing connections. A very spiritual experience, right? And he's deeply invested in his davening, and he sees someone approach, and suddenly this person is beside him, and who is it? It's Eliyahu Hanavi. Now, the Baal Shem Tov had witnessed Eliyahu Hanavi before, had met him before, but he was very excited because just good. Perfect. Okay. So the Baal Shem Tov was very, very excited because because Eliyahu Hanavi had shown himself to him. What does Eliyahu have to say for himself? Eliyahu says, I want to share with you what you're doing. Your davening is so powerful. You're creating yichudim on high. What's interesting is that the people who are hosting you, your host and your hostess, who are simple folk, by them walking through their house all day and just saying, Baruch Hashem for this, Baruch Hashem for that, without any sort of intention or anything behind it, that is creating more of a commotion on high than all of your davening. And the Baal Shem Tov walked away from that experience, from that moment with Eliyahu Hanavi, realizing that there's something that the simple folk offer with their life, with their liveliness, with their compassion, with their passion. There's something more there than what even tzaddik can offer. And so began a focus on simplicity and a focus on passion. And that continues. That continues throughout. There was a famous chassid by the name of Rashbatz. He was the tutor of, I think, the Rebbe Rashab and the Frierdiker Rebbe. Very, very, very special chassid. And he was known for his parables, for his mishalim. almost like to the level of like Shlomo Melech's, Aesop's Fables is based on Shlomo Melech's Mishalim. So he had that kind of level, the Proverbs of Rashbats. And one of the Mishalim that he gives is about a king who had a prized bird, loved his bird. It was beautiful, tremendous. It had a tremendous bearing. He loved that. He loved its colors. He loved how strong it was and how beautiful it was. And like all living things, at a certain point, it began to deteriorate. It wasn't doing very well. It didn't have its life was coming to an end. And so at first, its color lacked luster. And then it was losing its actual color, becoming a little bit more of a drab color. Then it started losing some feathers. Then one of its eyes started not working, and one of its feet started not working. And till ultimately the bird passed away. And the king was really upset, really sad. And all of his kingdom were mourning the loss of this king's prized bird. Now, this one man in the courtyard was a sculptor, and he decided he was going to make a gift for the king. So he took some clay and he fashioned the most beautiful bird that looked exactly, it was just a perfect replica of the real bird. Every single aspect of it was just beautiful, and the bird in its heyday, the bird when it was alive and well, he made the bird look just like it, and he presented it to the king, and the king looked at it and he's like, wow, it's very, very nice, thank you, right? Grateful of how touching and how meaningful it is for this man to work so hard to create something meaningful for him and give him a gift. But the sculptor, the artist, could notice that it wasn't doing it for the king. Like, the king wasn't really happy. And when he asked the king, he said, listen, I mean, you had your bird. It lived its life. Towards the end of its life, it didn't look its best. I gave you what your bird looked at its prime. You should be thrilled. Like, you should be so happy to be able to put this up on your mantle and be able to see it every single day. How beautiful this bird that was so meaningful to you. You could look at it every day now. And the king said, but it has no life in it. Right? It has no life in it. What's the nimshal? The idea is something could look beautiful. Something could technically be perfect on the outside. Our mitzvahs, our actions, our Torah can look wonderful, but it doesn't have life in it. And so to the king, it doesn't make him happy. It's not what he really wanted. What he wants is our passion and our life and our excitement. And now, over the next few classes, that's what the Alter Rebbe is going to be talking about. He's going to be focused on what is the life behind our mitzvahs. What is the life infused in our Torah? And there's different levels of life. And what does that look like? And how can we practically make that a part of our lives? There's a very interesting story about, it's a little bit of a sharp story, of the Baal Shem Tov coming to a shul in Germany, a German shul. And he walked in to daven there, and he walked right out. And the people around him asked, like, what's wrong? The Baal Shem Tov was coming here to learn, to daven, to something. And the Baal Shem Tov said, this shul is just so full of words. And so the German people of that shul felt like this was a huge compliment, and they said, yes, we daven a lot, we learn here a lot. And the Baal Shem Tov said, you're mistaking what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's so full of words. What is a tefillah? Tefillah is supposed to be a message flying up to Hashem. It's supposed to be a heartfelt prayer that doesn't stay down here. It flies up to Hashem. The words of Torah are supposed to be so passionate, they move, they go, they flow. But the words here are staying. They're just sitting here in this shul, and it's so full of words, I can't come in. What was the subtle teichacha that the Baal Shem Tov was giving? He's saying there's a lack of passion here. There's a kaltkeit. There's a lack, there's maybe even an indifference, a professionalism, a sophistication that is the underlying theme or the emotional temperature of this shul. And that's not what Hashem wants. Hashem wants wings to be attached to your prayer, and those wings that will bring that prayer or that learning up to Hashem and make it actually powerful for the Eibishter are the wings of passion, the wings of what the Alter Rebbe will now talk about as Ava and Yira. If you talk about passion in Hebrew, the word that you use would either be like, I'm no expert, but I think it would be hislavos, like excitement, or it would be chaim, which is like warmth, like basically like liveliness. The way the Alter Rebbe describes passion in the Tanya is by using the words Ava and Yira. What does Ava and Yira represent? Ava represents the passion to be, the desire to be connected. And Yira is the fear of disconnect. Right? And these are two driving forces that fill a person up and motivates their actions, allows their prayer to have wings, so to speak. Yes, like we've been saying before, I'm not discounting what we've been saying before. I know the Alter Rebbe keeps doing this. He presents something, and then he says, on that note, let's look at something else, and let's explain the advantage of that. I'm not, chas v'shalom, saying that doing a mitzvah without kavana is worthless. Chas v'shalom. The whole point is the action, and we spoke about that last week and the week before, last time and the time before, how important and crucial it is. Just like the Frierdiker Rebbe says, any mitzvah that comes your way is crucial. It's important for you to fulfill that mitzvah. And if you're learning Torah and a mitzvah comes up, then this is halacha. If you're learning Torah and a mitzvah comes up and it's a mitzvah that only you can do, everything stops for that mitzvah. Because right now we can't understand the subtleties of what Hashem wants from us in order to bring about Mashiach. So whatever comes your way is what you're supposed to be doing. And you have to depend and lean on the hashgacha pratis of this moment, right now, and grasp it, and do it to the best of your ability. And if it doesn't have the kavana or the ava and yira, and if it's not infused with ava and yira, that's okay. The action is so important, right? Again, purpose of creation is the action. Purpose of creation is to literally use the physical world for God. And the Alter Rebbe wants to bring in this concept of mitzvah b'lei kavana, keguf b'li neshama, which means a mitzvah that doesn't have that passion and that intention and that fire is like a body without a soul. Now, I don't know if you've ever had chapters in your life or seasons in your life, or maybe you've witnessed other people who have experienced this, but I've definitely experienced this where it's just like feeling like I've lost my passion. I've lost my drive. Where am I? What's going on? What am I passionate about right now? Have you ever witnessed a person, a body without a neshama, without a soul? What you probably have witnessed is a body with a neshama. Have you ever met someone who's passionate, who's zealous, who's filled with excitement? That person you notice, because it's the opposite that you usually meet. Because it takes a lot of effort to have that passion and that kavana and that intensity or that fire in your body about Yiddishkeit or about godliness. So how to do it? How to bring about that passion? So first of all, the Alter Rebbe says, if you view the world, right, if you have the emunah and betachain and the just like acknowledgement of God in the world. So when you look at the world from the prism of this is Hashem, so then everything is an opportunity to connect with Him, right? Because if I'm just thinking, okay, so on Sukkot, I have a lulav and esrog, that's the mitzvah that I have to get passionate about. And on Pesach, the mitzvah is to eat a matzah, and so I'm just going to wait till Pesach to eat matzah and like get passionate about that mitzvah. But the idea is that, and here the Alter Rebbe is bringing this so that it feels relatable and practical for us, and we can look at this idea from a pragmatic lens. Let me see the world as a godly place, right? Most of us don't interact with the world from like a Torah perspective, like every aspect of my life has to do with Torah. No, we look at the world and we see there's traffic, and we see we have to eat breakfast, and we also have to see that, we have a schedule to keep. And these are very worldly experiences, and that's kind of what we connect to first. And the Alter Rebbe says the first way to connect with this idea of passion and kavana is to look at your real experience and say, this is not a world devoid of God. This world is God, which means everything about what I'm seeing is an opportunity to connect with Him. Right? And that's what we're trying to do here. We want to feel connection, right? Remember what we're talking about here. We're talking about passion. Passion, the way it expresses itself is ava and yira. Ava is the desire to connect with Him, and yira is the deep fear of being disconnected from Him. Okay? And the first way to start getting attuned and start getting to feeling connected with even this idea of ava and yira is, hey, let me recognize that the world is God, that the world is all Him. So I should be experiencing so many opportunities to connect with Him, right? So a great example, that one of the easiest examples is the concept of hashgacha pratis. What's hashgacha pratis? Seeing that Hashem is intimately involved in every detail of our lives. And maybe we don't obviously understand it every single time that we witness it, and we don't understand why He's doing the things that He's doing, but looking at it and saying, this is from Hashem. Sometimes we do get to see the goodness that Hashem is bringing to our lives. But what's interesting is, as soon as sometimes you'll see that, there's a few different voices. One voice will say, wow, look what the Eibishter can do. Look how Hashem is so involved in the intricacies of my life. So beautiful that Hashem made this all happen, and how this event led to that event, which led to me finally taking care of this, and whatever it is. And sometimes there's another voice that says, no, that's just the natural world. These things happen. Yeah, it fit into place perfectly. That's great. And sometimes you'll hear the voice of course, yeah, Hashem is running the world. Yes, yes, yes. What are those voices, those other voices? The voices that sound like a downer, the voices that are saying, okay, it's not so exciting, or Hashem does this all the time, or this is just the nature of the beast. What are those voices? Those are the voices that Chassidus says are the voice of Amalek. Amalek, who's Amalek? When the Yidden were traveling in the desert, there was another nation, Amalek, who challenged the Yidden. And Rashi there explains that them challenging the Yidden was a drastic event. Why did it have so much impact? The reason being, Rashi explains, that when they challenged the Yidden, it was the first time anyone was challenging the Yidden. The Yidden came out of Mitzrayim, Nisim Niflais, miracles of miracles. Everybody in the world witnessed those miracles, knew what happened. They witnessed Kriyas Yamsuf. Their cup of water split. Everything split. They knew, everyone knew about Am Yisrael and how Hashem had chosen Am Yisrael and taken them out of Egypt with great miracles. Everyone was shivering. They were terrified of the Yidden. But all it took was one nation to say, meh. Literally, that's what Amalek did. They challenged. And what that did was create an entire history of anti-Semitism. We're not so great. You're not so amazing. You're not so incredible. And the example that Rashi brings is when there's a boiling hot tub of water, all it takes is the first person to jump in and it immediately cools it off. So there was a cooling experience, a kaltkeit, which means a coldness that was introduced. And the way Chassidus talks about the concept of Amalek is it's no longer even a nation anymore. It's like a philosophical experience. It's an intrinsic experience. It's a voice inside of each and every one of us. And that voice is a voice of coldness, of intellectualism, of bringing down the passion, of making sure that things are not so exciting, that you're not so passionate about whatever it is that's exciting you. And sometimes it sounds like a very frum voice. It sounds like a very Jewish voice, right? Like the voice of when you witness a miracle and the voice that says, of course, Hashem makes miracles all the time. What is that voice saying? Yeah, it's recognizing Hashem, and it's saying that Hashem makes miracles all the time, but the expression behind it or the intention behind it is to bring down the energy. And what we want to learn here from the Alter Rebbe is anything that's trying to bring down the energy is like a voice of a malik. Chas v'shalom to ever bring down the energy. Energy is life. Energy is force. That's what Hashem wants to see from us. That's what being a chassid is all about. We spent a whole unit on talking about simcha, right? We talked about passion a lot with the word simcha. Because serving Hashem with simcha is alacrity, it's movement, it's flow. Here we're dipping into a different kind of passion. It's a more intimate passion, and it's a more intense passion. And the Alter Rebbe is going to name 4 different ways of interaction between Hashem and Yidden and mitzvahs and serving Hashem. 4 different ways that a Yid can say, this is my relationship with the Eibishter, and this is how I interact with him by performing mitzvahs. It's actually interesting. It was just in this, not this past week's Chayinu, a few weeks ago. In the Chayinu, there's a section for either it's Tanakh or Nach. I'm forgetting which one it was. And in the section, it was Shmuel, we're in the Navi Shmuel base. And it's describing how David HaMelech had the opportunity to bring back the Aron to Yerushalayim. For a time, it had been somewhere else, stored in someone's house. Well, first it was with the Plishtim, and then they recovered it from the Plishtim, and they brought it to a certain city. I forgot what the city's name was. And then when he tried to bring it from that city to Yerushalayim, there was a terrible mishap where the Kohanim were riding in a wagon, and they had the Aron in the wagon, which was already a sign of disrespect to the Aron, because the Aron carried the Kohanim in the Midbar. Why would they think that they have to carry the Aron? So as the wagon was traveling to Yerushalayim, the oxen who were pulling it, they somehow hit a bump of sorts, and one of the Kohanim, I forgot what his name was, he reached out to steady the Aron, and he touched it. Both of which were an act of disrespect, because the Aron doesn't need you to catch it, right? The Aron could hold the Kohen himself. And that Kohen immediately passed away. And David took that as a sign that Hashem didn't want the Aron to be returned yet to Yerushalayim. So it stayed in, I think, the Kohen Gadol of the time's house, someone's house for about a few months. And then after that, David got the message that Hashem wanted it to return to Yerushalayim. Point is that this filled David with so much excitement. During his time, during his kingship, he was going to bring the Aron back, this return of the Aron. And the Psukim describe how David HaMelech was dancing before the Aron, making flips, doing somersaults, and in a true state of ecstasy. And I took down the psukim themselves because I took a picture because I wanted, first of all, I just think it's so interesting, but I thought it would be cool to read it inside. I'm reading the English. And as the Aron, the ark of the Lord, came into the city of David, Michal, the daughter of Shaul, who was David's wife, peered through the window, and she saw the king David hopping and dancing before the Lord, and she loathed him in her heart. Now, Michal was a tzedekes. Where was she coming from? What happened? She thought that this was disrespectful to David's position. He's the Melech of Am Yisrael, and he's dancing like a clown, in her eyes, in front of all the people. And she tells this to David when he comes home. She says, with a bit of a sarcastic tone, how honored was today the king of Israel who exposed himself in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as would expose himself one of the idlers. Basically criticizing him and saying, you're acting like you're one of the people. What about respect? Respecting your position, respecting who you are. You're a melech. David's response, before the Lord who chose me above your father and above all his house to appoint me prince over the people of the Lord over Israel. Therefore I have made merry before the Lord. And he basically continues on to say that, and defend his position and say, I was doing this for Eibishter. I was dancing with alacrity. I was dancing with passion. And nobody else thought there was anything disrespectful about the way I was doing it because it was for Hashem. It was a godly act. And I think of this story because oftentimes, I know for myself, being a more reserved personality, I often, because of that personality, will try to quiet the passion. Don't get too excited. Don't let yourself go out of the boundaries that keep you safe, and make sure that you look appropriate. Right? Oftentimes we have voices in our head that say, shh, just remain dignified. Whatever you do, remain dignified, or don't say anything because you don't want to say anything foolish. Those voices are voices that are bringing down the energy. They're putting a stoppage. They're literally disconnecting you from something that's actually trying to push you forward. Move into the realm of possibility, something open, something different. And I think it's an important message for us to hear what the Alter Rebbe is saying. The Alter Rebbe is saying, don't listen to the voice of Amalek, the voice of apathy, indifference, kaltkeit. Stay calm. Don't dance. Stay dignified. Look professional, right? Be an intellectual. No. The Alter Rebbe is saying, be something so much more than that. Feel alive. If you feel something, be passionate about it. If you want to be connected to Hashem, act on that. Allow yourself to experience the fear of disconnect from Hashem, and make sure that that's what's motivating you from a leitase, from performing chas v'shalom and avera. What's interesting is that there's a major criticism for Chabad Hasidim, because a lot of Chabad Hasidim are seen as the cold intellectuals. Why? Because, like we said last time, Chabad Hasidus is very much based on the Tanya and a lot of text, as opposed to other Hasidim where there's less text, more action, more connection to the Rebbe, there's a lot of connection to the Rebbe in Chabad Hasidus, but more about the passion, more about getting up and dancing during davening, or feeling really passionate, or getting excited, or simcha. And Chabad Hasidim are very intellectual, and that's an approach that we take, that we pride ourselves in. And at the same time, there's a lot of, criticism along those lines. And just something to kind of plant here is, chas v'shalom, to say that Chabad Hasidim are cold intellectuals. That's for sure not our approach. But the approach is, let me gather a lot of fuel to create a passionate burning fire. Let me gather all my tools in my toolbox. Let me make sure that I have it there so that it can be something that will be an everlasting burn. It's not to say that if I get excited about something, I should bring it down. Chas v'shalom. That's not what Chabad Hasidim are saying. But what is our approach, and why is it so intellectual? Because it's supposed to be an approach that's gathering all of you and bringing your intellect on board and bringing your feelings on board, and seeing if the more you study, the more you could add tools to your toolbox to experience the Ava, to experience the Yira in a holistic way, in a way that feels like it's really a true passionate experience. There's an interesting story about the Rebbe Rashab that the Friedrich Rebbe recounts. There was a period that the Rebbe Rashab just went out on his own, a few months where he just went out on his own to just get some time, some solitude, and to explore, kind of like listen to the people. So he would go from shul to shul and engage with people. And there are a few stories of what happened in his travels. There's actually one interesting story about how a young man approached him and said, you look like a real Talmid Chacham, but what I think you need is this book. And he gives them Likutei Amarim, he gives them the Tanya. He's giving the Rebbe Rashab the Alter Rebbe's Tanya, saying you need some passion, right? You need some passion in your Avodas Hashem. But the interesting story that the Rebbe Rashab told to his son and the Frierdiker Rebbe recounts is this fascinating story about how there were a bunch of Bachrim and they were learning. And they were learning to the side and they were loud. And there was a man sitting in the shul and he was learning Parshas Mishpatim. Just reading regular Chumash, right? And anybody could read Parshas Mishpatim if they know Hebrew. But there was something about the way that he was reading it that felt like he was so excited about it. Parshas Mishpatim is pretty dry. It's not like an exciting story. It's just mishpat after mishpat, mitzvah after mitzvah, kind of black and white halacha. And he was reading it with this excitement. So the Rebbe Rashab asked him, like, well, what's so exciting about Parshas Mishpatim? You're obviously a Talmud Chacham. Like, what is so exciting to you about this? And the man's retort was, what's not exciting about every part of Torah? Right? It's not the storyline that makes you excited. It's not the specific mitzvah that makes you excited. Anything that's going to connect you to the Eibishter more is exciting, is an opportunity to connect. That inspired the Rebbe Rashab. What about it was so inspiring? The focus on, I just want to connect to Eibishter, the passion of Ava and Yira being my byword. That's what this man was exhibiting. Yeah, it's Parshas Mishpatim. Who cares if it's Parshas Mishpatim? Bereshis, Mishpatim, Gemara, Mishnah, all of it fills me with passion because it's an opportunity to connect to the Eibishter. There was once a story about a bunch of Bachrim who didn't have a teacher. I'm not exactly sure of the details of it, but they were sitting in the Beis Medrash, and every day they got together and they learned, and they really did learn. Like, they learned and they were excited about their learning, but they were teenagers. So there was a lot of, like, I don't know, they were loud and they were excitable. And after they finished learning at the end of the day, they would farbring. And after they finished farbringing, they would get up and dance. And, you know, they were just lively. And the story goes that there was an old man, an Elder Chassid, who was very serious, who was also learning in that Beis Medrash. And he was very busy with his own learning schedule. And all throughout the day, they would be excited and arguing and passionate, and he would be learning on the side. But anytime they ever got up to dance, he would stop whatever it was that he was doing and join the dance. Join the dance. Join in, and he wouldn't say a word. He didn't connect with them, didn't talk to them. They finished dancing, he went right back to what he was doing. That's Chabad Chassidus. He was quietly engaging, quietly gathering himself, studying, being mispainin on Hashem. But if there's an opportunity to get excited, if there's something that comes up for him where he just wants to feel passionate about the Eibishter, he's going to join in. He's not a teenager who's constantly feeling excited, and that's just part of the energy of that season of their life. He's not feeling that. But if there's an opportunity to dip into that, he's going to run for it and engage with it. And I think that's something that we could walk away with as a something that we can engage with on our day-to-day basis. Of course, we don't live with a constant passion and desire to connect with Hashem. I mean, there's a part of us that does, our Nefesh Elokis does want to constantly connect with Hashem, but our real experience is maybe not so cognizant of that. But what we could do is when an opportunity comes up to feel passionate, to connect, you hear about a shir, you hear about a farbrengen, a friend reaches out and needs some support, you see the opportunity come up, or you feel the desire to connect come up. Don't squash it. Don't turn it off. Don't say, oh, that's not really you. You're not such a tzaddikas. You're not so amazing. Let's say someone asks you to speak, someone asks you to share something. Don't let the voice of Amalek or the voice of, quieting to come into your framework. And instead, listen to the voice of passion and say, maybe that's not exactly me. Maybe I'm not the most simchadik person. But if there's an opportunity for me to jump into that dance, I'm going to let myself feel it. And I'm going to let that fire burn. And as soon as it's done, I'll go back to my seat. I'll continue learning. I'll continue gathering myself, adding more fuel to the flames. But I want to be able to be ready for that passion when it comes up for me. Those moments of inspiration. And I could introduce them to myself as well if I know what hits for me. If I know that a niggin is something that's powerful for me, turn on a niggin once a week. Sit with it and just stop and listen to it and see what it does. Does it churn anything inside of you? Does it make you feel connected in a way? That's not just ephemeral or superficial. That could be something that you can latch onto. That's a part of you connecting to your nefesh elokis that is always passionate, that is always burning. Let's bring that, let's guide that to our lived experience, where we don't necessarily feel that passion, but let's introduce it, and let's not temper it or make it sit back down. And when you feel that passion, kind of bringing it back to the beginning of the class, when you're experiencing that passion, when you feel alive, it shows. When someone looks at you, they can see that Yiddishkeit is your passion. Yiddishkeit is something that, for sure, chas v'shalom, I'm not ashamed of. It's not something that you're hiding. It's not something that you're afraid of. But it's you. It's who you are. It's something that you live with. It's something that you're excited about. It's who you are. And that is, I just recently listened to a podcast by a not from Yid. This is so special, actually. Hope it's okay to say that. His podcast is called Call Me Back. Does anyone listen to this podcast, Call Me Back? No? Okay, let me find out what his name is. Give me a second, because it's important. I don't think he's an observant Jew, but he gave a speech, and he was saying this exact point. He was saying that in order to battle, hold on. Hold on. Okay. Dan Senor, sorry. So Dan Senor spoke recently to a bunch of Yidden. I think most of them actually were not from. And he was basically addressing, his whole podcast is about what's happening in Eretz Yisrael and how we can combat anti-Semitism. So he is constantly interviewing people on the inside in Eretz Yisrael, so literally talking to people in the army, people in the higher ups in the government, hearing the real story, and informing American Jewry or world Jewry about what's actually happening in Israel. Really great podcast, speaks to a lot of important people, is a real intellectual. One of the things that he said when he's speaking to Am Yisrael, but really nowadays when something's a podcast, he could be addressing thousands and thousands and thousands of people. He said that the way to battle anti-Semitism is that your Jewish pride is so much a part of you that there's nothing to attack. The reason why they're attacking, and this is pretty much a frum idea that we speak about all the time, but not necessarily is spoken about in the unorthodox world. But as soon as we lose our passion and our respect for our Judaism, that's when there's room for the wolves to move in. That's where the weakness lies. It's you should listen to this podcast, this episode. It was so inspiring to hear someone speak about Yiddishkeit and how passionate, about excited, and about how much pride we have to have in our Yiddishkeit. And he says to all the people there, he says the only thing that helps that, and he lists them off, is sending your children to a Jewish day school. Nothing makes a child more filled with pride than going to a Jewish school. And then he says Jewish camps. Jewish camps are the way to connect a Jewish child with their Yiddishkeit. That's how they feel the Jewish pride. That's how they feel connected. And for us to know as well, what are the ways that make us feel connected? What awakens my passion for Yiddishkeit so that it feels like I'm living it? And when someone looks at me, they say, that's an alive Jew. That's a Jew who lives a passionate connection with the Eibishter. So I think this is the last class before Shavuos. Shavuos is us receiving the Torah, literally that ultimate connection that the Eibishter gave to us as a gift, a way for us to feel the connection, for us to communicate with Him. The Torah is Hashem's love language. If we want Hashem to feel like we're really invested in this relationship, the best way to do that is to engage with Torah and mitzvahs. And Hashem gave that to us as a gift and said, on Har Sinai, I want a relationship with you. And the best that we could do in response is say, I love this relationship with you. I love being connected to you. And I want you to see that and feel that, not just when I'm performing Torah and mitzvahs, but in every moment of my life. You should see, here lives a passionate Jew, someone who's connected to Eibishter and has a relationship with Him and invests in that and lives it and breathes it. So Shavuot should be that breakthrough for us, God willing, this year. We should feel Hashem's relationship with us, and we should feel like we're giving back in that relationship by feeling a passionate yearning to feel connected to Him. And God willing, in the coming weeks, we're going to discuss what that looks like for the layman, for the Beinoni, for the tzaddik, and how we could tap into each of those different forms of Ava and Yira. Yeah. Have a beautiful Shavuos, Kabbalah Satira, B'simcha, B'pnimius, and looking forward to continuing.